James Arness is a name that probably rings a bell if you were a fan of westerns back in the golden age of TV. He's an actor deserving of review, and that's exactly what we're about to do. Find out how he got his start in show business and what his first breakout was that still retains a cult status to this day in just a minute, but first, let's take a look at his formative years. From humble beginnings to the horrors of war. James Arness, who you probably know from a little show called Gunsmoke, had a pretty typical childhood in Minneapolis, Minnesota. His father was Rolf Arness, a businessman of sorts, and his mother Ruth was a journalist. The Arness family, as they were then known, were Methodists and were your typical American family just trying to get by in the years following the Great Depression. James went to West High School in Minneapolis and worked as a delivery boy for a local jewelry business to help pay the bills. He was a mediocre student and skipped a class as often as he could manage, but he eventually graduated from high school in 1942. Despite having such a mundane upbringing, it was his time spent in the armed forces during wartime that proved to be the most jolting and molding era of his life. During the Battle of Anzio, where he served as a rifleman in the U.S. 3rd Infantry Division of the Army in what was called Operation Shingle, his right leg was sprayed with a fire of bullets from a machine gun. Although he received prompt medical attention, his bones, once set, did not mend properly, resulting in a minute yet permanent limp. Arness was honorably discharged from the Army on January 29, 1945, with full honors and several decorations, including the Bronze Star Medal and a Purple Heart. From aimless wanderer to movie star. Following his traumatic experiences in the war, he turned to a life of aimless wandering to cope. As a beach bum of sorts, he first hitchhiked, then lived out of his vehicle, and took on odd jobs in sales and carpentry to get by. Among his two main hobbies at the time were surfing the waves of San Onofre Surf Beach and performing in small theater productions. He treated his proclivity for acting with a similar degree of disregard as he did with the rest of his life at the time, but eventually managed to catch a break and found his way into the marquee lights of Hollywood. Perhaps it was his hardy good looks or his tall frame, standing at 6'6", that helped him find success in the mercilessly competitive battleground that is Tinseltown. But soon he achieved stardom for his work both on the big and small screen. He had a few memorable roles that helped immortalize him as one of show business's legendary thespian elites, the first of which was in the 1947 film The Farmer's Daughter alongside Loretta Young, but one role in particular helped elevate him to the status of a cult icon. Arness was cast as the nefarious, irradiated intergalactic space alien in The Thing in 1951. From there, however, it looked like there weren't many opportunities for the actor who played, as one commentator described, an intellectual carrot. His career floundered for a while, leaving the young actor to believe his future would consist of a long slew of supporting roles and nothing more. He starred in yet another sci-fi flick, Them, in 1954, but after that, he struggled to find work. In contrast, his younger brother, Peter Graves, looked as if he was poised to be the member of the family to have a more promising shot at stardom. Graves opted to use his mother's surname instead of his paternal name, Arness. James, on the other hand, simply dropped the U from his name and made his own. Come to think of it, Jim Phelps, who starred in Mission Impossible and played Clarence Over in the Airplane movies, was also a member of the Arness family. He got by with a little help from his friend. John Wayne, however, saw something in Arness that he liked. So when Arness was cast in John's film Big Jim McClane in 1953, it appeared that James's ship was finally starting to turn around. Wayne and Arness subsequently developed a bit of an alliance after working together on that film. So when Wayne turned down the role of Matt Dillon on the TV adaptation of the popular radio show Gunsmoke, he dropped Arness's name as a potential suitor for the part. He even went out of his way to make sure Arness was properly introduced to audiences with a flattering, specially scripted intro to the first episode of the series. Gunsmoke was the creation of Norman Macdonald, who also served as the series director. The primary writer was John Meston, and the program went on to become the #1 ranked show on TV from 1957 to 61. 20 seasons of gunslinging. In truth, Arness wasn't exactly thrilled to be locked into a weekly series either. After the completion of each season, rumors would circulate he would soon make his departure. The same old story would play out for the entire 20-season run of Gunsmoke, each time with Arness's salary growing larger and larger with each passing year. Arness would also be given a greater say as to how the series would play out. With added creative control over the series, a hefty bit of the profits and residuals of the iconic Western were being deposited into Arness's bank account. The series began to decline in ratings in the mid-60s. In '67, CBS expanded the show to 1 hour. However, this move didn't revive viewership, and the network planned on canceling, but fans came to the rescue through an overwhelming display of support that included a successful letter-writing campaign. Instead of canceling the series as they had intended, CBS canceled Gilligan's Island instead, and moved the series to Monday night time slot where it stayed for the remainder of its run. By the time Gunsmoke finally sounded off in 1975, Arness was one of only 4 of the original principal actors to remain on the series. Amanda Blake, Dennis Weaver, and Milburn Stone were also members of that club. The cast and crew didn't expect the cancellation when it finally came. Arness was somewhat discouraged the show didn't get a proper wrap-up. He had fully expected Gunsmoke to keep on going for another season or two, allowing for all the plot lines to come to a fitting conclusion. But such is the way of television. If you're enjoying this video so far, make sure you hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Tap the bell icon to turn on notifications so you can keep up with all our facts-filled videos. Stay tuned to find out how James Arness made his final curtain call when he passed away in 2011. Life after Gunsmoke, a reluctant return to form. James had planned on taking things relatively easy after the lengthy 20-year run on the series. He appeared in the mini-series How the West Was Won in 1977 as gun-toting Zeb McAhan, which was then adapted into a series in 1978 he'd star in as well. Interestingly, his character Zeb reached cult status in Europe, where the series found an enthusiastic audience and fan base. The program was rebroadcast on networks all across the continent, including France, Italy, Sweden, and Germany. Despite his success in these series, Arness had felt typecast as a gunslinger and desperately wanted to rebrand himself as something else. In 1981, he starred in McLean's Law, a contemporary law enforcement drama series set in the Southwest, which yet again saw the actor riding on the back of a horse from time to time. In 1988, Arness would bite the bullet, so to speak, and star in the Western film Red River, a remake of the classic 1948 flick of the same title, starring his late great friend John Wayne. Despite his efforts to change his image, it seems Arness would always be remembered for his Gunsmoke persona Matt Dillon in the eyes of the masses. So he reprised the role for the 4 made-for-TV reboot movies aired in the late 80s and early 90s. Death and a legacy worth celebrating. Just as he came into this world under ordinary circumstances, so was his departure. James Arness died in his home in Brentwood, California of natural causes on June 3, 2011. His remains were laid to rest in a mausoleum called the Sanctuary of Abiding Hope Alcove at Forest Lawn Memorial Park in Glendale, the same resting grounds that Humphrey Bogart, Nat King Cole, and Michael Jackson were entombed. James Arness left behind a legacy that won't soon be forgotten. Among the many honors and accolades that immortalize his place in showbiz history is his star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame. He's also been inducted into the Western Performers Hall of Fame in Oklahoma City. People magazine named him number 6 on their top 25 TV stars of all time back in 1989. Similarly, TV Guide also included him on their 50 greatest television stars of all time list in 1996. James Arness was also a favorite of critics. He was nominated for Emmy Awards 3 times throughout his celebrated career. In 1957, he picked up his first Emmy nod and then followed that up in 58 and 59 with subsequent considerations. There's no denying the fact that James Arness is one of the greatest actors of his breed in Hollywood history. He may have sustained a rather grisly injury back in his Army days on the battlefield, but he never let that hold him back from achieving a life and career worth celebrating. And 88 years is a pretty good run considering all he went through and managed to accomplish. What was your favorite role James Arness played? Matt Dillon on the 635 episodes of Gunsmoke, or Zeb McAhan on How the West Was Won? Let us know what you think in the comments section. And if you've enjoyed watching this video, make sure you show us a little support by hitting the like button, subscribing to our channel, and tapping the bell icon to turn on notifications so you can keep up to date with all our latest content.